It was past midnight when the rain started tapping against the diner's windows. I remember that sound, sharp, rhythmic, like it was counting down to something I couldn't see coming. Most nights were quiet at this hour. Just me, the coffee machine humming, and the glow of neon reflecting on empty booths. But that night, something felt off. He walked in without saying a word. Black suit, cold eyes, and that kind of silence that makes the air heavier. You could tell he wasn't the kind of man who waited for a menu. He sat at table 9, the corner booth facing the door, and for some reason, everyone else in the diner suddenly looked smaller. I went over trying to sound normal. "Coffee?" He looked up, his gaze cutting through the dim light. "Black, no sugar." Simple words, but his voice, deep, calm, dangerous, made my hands tremble as I poured his cup. When I placed it down, I noticed the scar near his wrist, thin, silver, like a reminder of something he'd survived. He caught me looking. "Curious?" he asked. I swallowed hard, just observant. He smiled slightly, like he wasn't used to people talking back. That's when 2 men walked in. Black coats, wet boots, no eye contact. They didn't look like customers. They looked like shadows following a heartbeat. The boss. I didn't know he was one yet. Didn't turn around. He didn't need to. He saw them through the reflection in his cup. I still remember how he said it, low and slow. "Stay still, please." And for some reason, I listened. Every instinct screamed to move, to step back, but something about his voice made me freeze. Then it happened fast. The bell above the door jingled again, but this time no one walked in. The 2 men exchanged a glance, one reaching inside his coat. Before I could even blink, the man at table 9 spoke without looking up. "You're late." Both of them froze. And suddenly I understood. They weren't here for dinner. They were here for him. He lifted his cup, took a slow sip, and said, "Tell Ricci his mistake will cost him more than a drink." Then everything went silent. The kind of silence that hums before a storm. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe instinct, maybe fear, maybe something else entirely. But I whispered, "Behind you." He didn't flinch. He just tilted his head, eyes still on me, and said, "Stay still, please." And then the sound of a gun clicking broke the air. That was the first time I saw someone stare down death without blinking. And I swear, the way he moved after that didn't seem human. In one motion, he flipped the table, the bullet slicing through the air where his head had been a second ago. The coffee cup shattered. My scream got stuck somewhere in my throat. One of the men went down fast. The other ran, but he didn't make it to the door. It was over in seconds. And just like that, the diner was quiet again. He turned to me, calm as if nothing had happened. "Sorry for the mess," he said, wiping blood from his sleeve. My legs were shaking so badly I had to grab the counter. "Who are you?" I whispered. He looked at me for a long time, then smiled faintly. "Someone you shouldn't have saved." That night changed everything. And if I'd known who he really was, the man people whispered about in fear, the one they called Il Leone, I would have locked the door before he ever walked in. But fate doesn't knock. It just walks in, orders coffee, and leaves you wondering what you've just started. If you've ever felt that one moment where your whole life shifts without warning, you know exactly what I mean. And if you don't, well, maybe this story will show you why some doors should never be opened. Oh, and before I forget, if you want to know what happened next, don't just scroll past, because trust me, this is where everything starts to burn. So, like this story if it already gave you chills, and subscribe if you're ready to see how deep this betrayal really goes. The rain didn't stop that night. It just kept falling harder, like the sky itself wanted to wash away what happened inside that diner. But no matter how loud it got, I couldn't stop hearing that one sound, the gunshot that almost found me. He was still there, standing by the door, calm like it was just another night. I'd seen cops panic over spilled coffee, but this man, he didn't even blink. He turned to me and said quietly, "You didn't see anything." My voice came out shaky. I saw everything." He smiled faintly, almost sad. "Then I guess you've got a problem." He pulled out a phone, sleek, black, and silent, and made a single call. "Clean it up," he said, and hung up before anyone could answer. Minutes later, 2 cars pulled up outside. Dark sedans, no plates. Headlights cutting through the storm like eyes that knew too much. 3 men stepped out. Suits, gloves, no words. They moved around the diner fast, efficient, like they'd done this 100 times before. One of them nodded at the man from table 9. "It's handled, boss." Boss. That word hung in the air like smoke. I felt something twist inside me. The kind of fear that doesn't make you scream, just makes you quiet. He noticed. "You're not going to faint, are you?" I shook my head. "Who are you people?" He paused, as if considering whether the truth was worth telling. Then he said, "You can call me Luca." But the way he said it told me that wasn't his real name. When the bodies were gone and the blood mopped off the tiles, the diner looked the same. But I wasn't the same, because for the first time, I realized how thin the line was between the world I lived in and his. He reached into his coat, pulled out a few bills and placed them on the counter, too many for a cup of coffee. "For the damage," he said. I looked at the money, then at him. "You think that fixes it?" His eyes softened, just a fraction. "No, but it's all I can give you tonight." He started walking away. And I don't know what made me do it, but I called after him. "Luca, right? If someone's trying to kill you, maybe stop drinking coffee in public." He stopped. Didn't turn around. Just said, "If someone's trying to kill me, they already know where I sleep." And then he was gone. Into the rain. Into the night. Into whatever world he ruled from the shadows. I thought that was the last I'd ever see of him. But life has a cruel way of looping back, because the next night, just when I started convincing myself it was over, a black car stopped outside my house. No lights, no sound, just headlights cutting through the fog, like 2 eyes watching me breathe. I stood frozen by the window, the same words echoing in my head. "Stay still, please." I didn't move. I couldn't. And that's when I saw the silhouette step out of the car. It was him. Luca. But he wasn't alone. Sometimes I think about how easy it is to step into someone else's storm without realizing it. One wrong word, one kind act, one moment of curiosity, and suddenly you're standing in the crosshairs of a world you don't understand. And before we go on, tell me something. Would you have opened the door if you saw that car? Or would you have turned off the lights and prayed they drove away? I really want to know. Tell me in the comments. Because what I did next, it changed everything. And if this story already has you on edge, make sure you've subscribed. You don't want to miss what happens when the betrayal finally begins. The rain hadn't stopped since that night at the diner. It poured harder now, turning the streetlights into blurry halos and flooding the cracks in the old pavement. I stood behind my curtain, heart pounding as the black car idled across the street. Every second felt like an hour, every flash of lightning like a camera capturing proof of my mistake. Then the car door opened. He stepped out, the man they called Luca. Same dark coat, same cold confidence. But tonight something was different. He wasn't calm. He was bleeding. Even from my window I saw the crimson stain spreading near his ribs. He stumbled, one hand pressed to his side, the other clutching something small and metallic. I should have called the police. That's what any sane person would do. But after what I'd seen in that diner, I knew one thing. People like him didn't need police. They were the reason the police looked the other way. Still, I couldn't ignore it. I grabbed my umbrella and stepped outside, my shoes splashing into puddles that felt like ice. The rain hit my face so hard it stung, but I didn't stop. He looked up when I reached him, eyes glassy but still sharp. "You shouldn't be here." "I live here," I said, breathless. "You're the one bleeding on my street." He chuckled, or tried to, then leaned against the car. "Guess I'm bad at staying out of trouble." "You need a hospital." He shook his head. "No hospitals." His voice was weaker now, but his stare could still freeze fire. "I can't let anyone know where I am," he said. "They'd finish what they started. Then at least come inside before you collapse." He hesitated, then nodded once, and just like that, the most dangerous man I'd ever met followed me into my tiny apartment. dripping blood on my carpet like it was nothing. He dropped onto the couch, his breathing shallow. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a towel, and knelt beside him. "Hold this." When I pressed it to his side, he winced but didn't pull away. "You really shouldn't be helping me," he muttered. "You don't even know who I am." I looked up, meeting his gaze. "Then tell me." He was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "Luca Bilano." The name meant nothing to me then, but I'd find out soon enough it was the name whispered in every backroom deal across the city, the man behind the chaos, the shadow pulling every string. "You shouldn't have said that," I murmured. He smirked faintly. "You asked." His blood was warm against my hands. Somewhere deep inside, a voice whispered that I should have locked the door and called for help. But another voice, quieter, almost irrational, said something else. "He trusted you enough to bleed here." After a few minutes, his breathing steadied. He leaned back, eyes half closed. "You saved me again. I don't like owing people twice. You can pay me back by not dying on my couch." That earned a weak laugh. "Deal." I watched him in silence. The rain kept falling outside, washing the world clean while mine got messier by the second. Who was this man, really? What kind of world did he come from, where people cleaned up bodies instead of calling for help? Before I could ask, he opened his eyes again. "There's something you need to know." His tone had changed, lower, urgent. "The men from the diner, they weren't alone. They were scouts. Someone's planning something bigger. A betrayal." I froze. "Betrayal?" He nodded slowly. "Someone close to me sold me out. I don't know who yet, but they'll come after anyone who saw what happened that night." I felt my stomach drop. "Wait, you mean me?" He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes said everything. Outside, thunder rolled through the city, and just like that, I realized this wasn't about helping a stranger anymore. This was survival. I stood up, trying to steady my voice. "What do we do now?" Luca looked at me. Not like I was some waitress anymore, but like I was part of something I didn't understand. "Now," he said softly. "Now we wait." The power flickered. The lights dimmed. For a second, the whole room went dark. Just the rain, the sound of his breathing, and my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Then I saw it through the window. Headlights. 3 cars this time. All black, all silent. Luca stood up fast, pain forgotten. "They found me." I grabbed his arm. "What are you talking about?" He looked out the window, eyes narrowing. "They shouldn't have known where I was. Someone tipped them off. Maybe they followed you." He shook his head. "No one follows me without permission." The headlights cut through the rain, closer now, bright enough to fill the entire room with white light. I backed away, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it. "What do we do?" I whispered. He turned to me, calm again. That same voice from the diner, the one that could still a storm. "Stay still, please." And before I could ask why, the front door shook under the first hit. You ever feel that moment when your entire world balances on one heartbeat? That's where I was standing, between fear and something I couldn't name. And if you were there, would you have trusted him? Tell me below. Because I want to know if you'd open the door or run. And if this story already has your pulse racing, like it did mine that night, hit that like button. It tells me I'm not the only one who couldn't look away. And make sure you've subscribed, because the next part is where the betrayal finally steps inside. The first bang against the door made me jump. It wasn't a knock and it was a warning. Wood splintered under the force, echoing through the apartment like thunder. Luca didn't flinch. He pulled a small pistol from inside his coat, checked the chamber, and exhaled like this was just another Tuesday night. "Back room," he said. Now, I didn't argue. My hands were shaking too much to even grab my phone. The second hit came harder. The hinges cracked. Luca moved toward the door, calm, measured, every motion deliberate. When he spoke again, his voice was lower. "No matter what happens, stay still until I say otherwise." I wanted to ask who they were, why they were here. But the look in his eyes told me not to waste breath on questions that didn't matter. The third hit sent the door flying open. 3 men stormed in, drenched from the rain, masks over their faces. The first one shouted, "Where is he?" The moment his boot crossed the threshold, Luca fired. It wasn't chaos. It was precision. 2 shots, clean, controlled. The first man dropped before he even saw who fired. The second lunged forward, swinging a crowbar. Luca sidestepped, slammed his arm into the man's neck, and twisted. The sound was sickening. The third man froze, just long enough for Luca to aim again. But before he could shoot, the man shouted, "Don't! It's Marco!" Luca hesitated. For the first time since I'd met him, I saw confusion flash across his face. The man ripped off his mask. He was older, maybe mid-40s, with scars running down his jaw. Rain dripped from his hair. "Boss," he said, breathless. "It's me. It's Marco." Luca lowered his gun slightly. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I came to warn you." Marco glanced at the 2 bodies on the floor, then at me. They weren't ours. They were Vescari's men. They found the leak. Luca's expression darkened. "The leak?" Marco nodded grimly. "Someone in your circle sold you out. Someone close. I traced the call. It came from inside your own security line." The word hung in the air, heavy, poisonous. "Someone close." Luca turned to me briefly. "Get my bag, closet." I ran, barely keeping my balance as my heart tried to climb out of my chest. When I came back, he was pacing, his hand pressed against his wound again, the floor now streaked with water and blood. Marco's voice was low. "They'll hit again soon. Bigger crew next time. We have to move." Luca's tone was cold steel. "We're not running." "You can't fight what you don't see coming. I've survived worse." "Not like this, boss," Marco said quietly. "Not when the betrayal came from the inside." Luca stopped. His jaw tightened. For a moment, he looked past Marco. Through the window, through the storm, somewhere deep inside his own past. "Who?" he asked. Marco hesitated. Luca's voice dropped. "Who?" Marco exhaled. "Nico. He sold your route. Told Vescari where to find you. He's been with us for 7 years. I didn't know who Nico was, but the way Luca froze told me everything. Someone he trusted. Someone he'd built his empire with. He didn't shout. He didn't break. He just changed. Something inside him turned darker, quieter, more dangerous. When he finally spoke, it wasn't loud, but it made the whole room feel smaller. "Then Nico dies tonight." Marco nodded once. "I'll get the car ready." Luca turned to me. "You can't stay here. Where am I supposed to go?" "Anywhere but here. They'll come again." "I'm not leaving you like this," I said before I could stop myself. He stared at me, like he was trying to understand why anyone would say something so stupid. Then he sighed, almost smiling. "You really don't listen, do you?" "Not when someone bleeds on my couch." For a second, that cold exterior cracked. He almost looked human. Then it was gone. He buttoned his coat, pain hidden behind the fabric. "Marco, get her somewhere safe. After that, meet me at the docks. Boss, do it." I stepped forward. "Luca, what if it's a trap?" He looked at me, rain and lightning reflected in his eyes. "It already is." The storm outside roared louder, wind slamming against the windows as Marco opened the back door. "Come on," he said. "We don't have much time." Before I followed, Luca's voice stopped me. "Hey," he said softly. "Thanks. For not freezing back there." I smiled weakly. "You told me to stay still." He grinned, that quiet, dangerous grin that always came before chaos. "Then keep doing that." And just like that, he was gone, swallowed by the rain, the night, and the revenge waiting in the shadows. They say people like him can't feel. That men who build their power on fear forget what it means to care. But that night, when he looked back at me one last time through the storm, I swear I saw something real. Something broken, if you felt it too. Don't scroll past. Hit the like button. It lets me know you saw what I saw in him. And tell me in the comments, do you believe men like him can ever change? Because the next part will test that answer, and entrust me, you won't be ready for what he does next. The rain followed us all the way to the docks, cold, relentless. The kind of rain that hides things, footsteps, voices, danger. Marco drove like a man who'd done this before, headlights off, his jaw tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat in the back seat, watching the city fade behind us. Every turn felt like another step away from normal life, from coffee, laughter, daylight. "From safety, where's he going?" I asked finally. Marco didn't answer at first. His eyes stayed fixed on the road, the wipers dragging rhythmically across the glass. "To finish something he should have finished years ago," he said. "You don't want the details, but I did. I wanted to know what kind of man risked everything, bleeding, hunted, and still chose to face a betrayal head-on. And why, out of all people, he trusted me, a waitress who couldn't even keep her hands steady holding a coffee cup." Marco parked near the edge of the pier, engine still running. The air smelled like rust and sea salt. "Stay here," he ordered. "Lock the doors. Don't move till I come back." I nodded, but my gut twisted, because something about this night felt wrong. Too quiet, too calculated. And in Luca's world, quiet meant danger waiting to exhale. Through the fog, I saw him, Luca, standing near the old warehouse at the end of the dock. The glow from a single lamp flickered above him, reflecting off the wet concrete. He looked like a ghost, one hand in his coat pocket, the other clutching his side. He wasn't hiding. He was waiting. Another car rolled up, black, like all the others. Its doors opened and 3 men stepped out. One of them was younger, sharp suit, slick hair, and a smile that didn't belong on a rainy night like this. "Nico," Marco muttered under his breath. That was him, the traitor. The man who'd sold out his own boss. He approached Luca with his hands out, pretending peace. "Boss," Nico said, almost casual. "You shouldn't have come alone." "I didn't," Luca replied coldly. "I brought your conscience with me," Nico laughed. "Still poetic, even when you're bleeding. You always talk too much." "Maybe," Nico said. "But tonight, you'll finally listen." Behind him, 2 men drew their guns. But before they could aim, Luca moved. Fast, smooth, merciless. 3 shots echoed through the docks. The sound bounced off the water, mixed with thunder, and vanished into the rain. The 2 men dropped instantly. Nico didn't. He just stood there, drenched and trembling, as Luca stepped closer. "I raised you," Luca said, his voice calm, deadly. "You ate at my table. You swore loyalty. And you broke every rule we ever lived by." Nico snapped. "You got soft. You let them in." His eyes flicked toward the car, toward me. For a moment, Luca didn't move. Then he said, almost to himself, "She has nothing to do with this." Nico smirked. "Everyone has something to do with this. You just don't see it yet." That's when I saw it. Movement on the roof of the warehouse. Shadows. Guns. There were more of them, at least 6. I didn't think. I just acted. I threw open the car door and shouted, "Luca, above you!" The moment he turned, bullets tore through the air. Sparks exploded off the metal crates. The air filled with the sound of chaos, gunfire, shouting, rain. Luca dove behind a container, returning fire with precision even as blood stained his shirt darker. Marco slammed his fist on the dashboard. "Damn it, it's an ambush!" He grabbed his weapon and bolted out into the rain. I followed, stupidly, recklessly, but I couldn't sit there watching. By the time I reached the edge of the dock, everything was a blur. Luca was pinned down behind a stack of cargo, trading shots with men who seemed to appear from everywhere. Marco took cover beside him, shouting something I couldn't hear. Then I saw it, one of the gunmen on the roof, aiming directly at Luca. My heart dropped. Without thinking, I grabbed a loose pipe from the ground and hurled it at the lamp above him. The light shattered, glass raining down, and the sniper's shot went wide. Luca glanced back at me, eyes fierce, rain dripping from his hair. "Didn't I tell you to stay still?" he shouted. "Yeah," I yelled back. "You're terrible at giving orders." He almost smiled, even in the middle of a gunfight. And then he was moving again, faster, deadlier, closing in on Nico. The last shots came quick. When the smoke cleared, it was over. Bodies lay scattered. The storm had quieted to a whisper. Luca stood over Nico, who was now kneeling on the ground, clutching his leg where a bullet had grazed him. "You should have stayed loyal," Luca said quietly. Nico's voice broke. They offered me more than loyalty ever did. And how much is your life worth now? For a moment, I thought he'd pull the trigger, but he didn't. He just stepped back, lowered the gun, and said, "You'll live long enough to regret this." Marco came limping over. "Boss, we need to move. Cops will be here soon." Luca turned to me. "You shouldn't have followed." I looked him dead in the eye. "You shouldn't have come alone." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said softly, "Maybe I didn't." That night changed something in him, and in me. Because after the smoke cleared, and I saw what loyalty and betrayal really cost in his world, I realized monsters aren't born. They're made by the people who betray them. If you felt that too, that pull between darkness and loyalty, hit the like button right now. And tell me in the comments, if you were him, would you have pulled the trigger? Because the next part, that's where the lines between love and vengeance start to blur. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. You'll want to be here when the truth about why she warned him finally comes out. The docks were silent now. Police sirens echoed faintly in the distance, but Luca didn't flinch. He stood there, rain still running down his face, watching the horizon like a man waiting for a storm that would never end. Marco was already making calls, his voice a low growl. "Cars are gone. We need to move before anyone else shows up." But Luca wasn't listening to him. He was staring at me, and in his eyes I saw something that wasn't there before. Not suspicion, not anger, but realization. He walked toward me slowly, his steps echoing against the wet concrete. When he spoke, his tone was calm, too calm. "How did you know?" I blinked. "Know what?" "That they were on the roof," he said. "You saw them before anyone else." Before me, my heart dropped. I just looked up. "No one just looks up," he interrupted. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight that made my stomach twist. Especially in a gunfight. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He was studying me like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit. "Who told you?" he asked quietly. For a second, I almost forgot to breathe. Because how could I explain something I didn't fully understand myself? I looked down, trying to steady my voice. "No one told me. I just saw the shadow move. Instinct, maybe." He didn't believe me. I could tell by the way his jaw tightened, the way his hand brushed the gun at his side like a reflex. Marco stepped closer, sensing the tension. "Boss, she saved your life. Maybe cut her some slack." Luca's eyes didn't leave mine. "That's exactly why I can't." His words hit harder than the rain. "You think I set you up?" I whispered. "I think too many people around me are dying for me to believe in coincidences." The silence stretched between us, heavy and bitter. For the first time since I met him, I saw fear. Not mine, his. The kind that doesn't look like panic, but control slipping through your fingers. He finally turned away, pacing to the edge of the pier. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Who are you really, Anna?" Hearing my name in his tone like that, it cut deeper than I expected. "I already told you," I said softly. "I'm a waitress at Benny's. You've been there before. You know that." He turned back to me, rain-soaked and unreadable. "People like me don't get lucky enough to be saved twice by a stranger." "So tell me, what's your angle?" My throat felt tight. I didn't want to lie. Not to him. But I also couldn't tell the truth. "Not yet," Marco finally spoke up again. "Boss, she's not lying. I checked her background this morning. No records, no connections. Just a clean life." Luca looked at him sharply. "You ran her background?" Marco shrugged. "Of course. You don't bleed in someone's living room without checking who they are afterward." He wasn't wrong. Luca finally exhaled and rubbed a hand over his face. "We're done here. Let's move before the cops get close." Then, to me, "You're coming with us." I froze. "What? No, I'm not." "You are," he said simply. "They'll come looking for you next." "You think they don't know your face by now? You were there. You saw everything." He was right. I hated that he was right. If Nico had known about me, so did whoever was behind him. "Fine," I muttered. "But I'm not getting into another one of those black cars." He actually smirked, just slightly. "Then pick a color next time." By the time we reached the safe house, dawn had started to bleed through the rain clouds. A pale, tired light washed over the empty streets. The safe house was an old townhouse on the city's edge. Quiet, empty, too clean to be home. Luca walked straight to the kitchen, poured himself a drink, and downed it without hesitation. Marco went to the windows, checking angles, corners, exits. And me? I just stood there, soaked, shivering, unsure why I hadn't run the first chance I got. After a while, Luca looked at me again. "Why'd you really warn me that night at the diner?" I froze. Because this was the question I'd been trying to avoid since the beginning. I took a deep breath. "My brother," I said finally. "He worked for a man named Viscari, same one who sent those men tonight." That got his attention. He turned fully toward me, glass still in hand. "Your brother?" "Yeah, Jason, he was stupid. Thought he could handle their money. Thought it was just business. He went missing 6 months ago. I started asking around. Heard his name whispered in your world." Luca's eyes narrowed. "You thought I killed him?" I didn't know what to think. "But the night you came to the diner, I heard one of Vescari's men mention your name. I thought maybe you could lead me to what happened to him." He leaned back, processing every word. "So you were watching me?" "I was watching for him. You just happened to sit at my table." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then Luca said quietly, "Your brother isn't dead." The air left my lungs. "What?" "He was working under Viscari's accountant, until 2 months ago. Then he disappeared with a shipment record. Vescari thinks I took him. Did you?" He shook his head. "No, but I've been looking for him too." Something in his tone told me it wasn't a lie. For the first time, I saw the truth in his eyes. Not the Mafia boss, not the cold strategist. Just a man who carried too many ghosts. That's when I realized something. We weren't just connected by coincidence. We were connected by fate. He was searching for a traitor. I was searching for my brother. And both trails led to the same shadow, Viscari. Luca set his glass down and looked at me with that quiet intensity again. "Looks like you and I have the same enemy now, Anna." And just like that, our worlds weren't separate anymore. They were tangled, dangerous, magnetic, and impossible to walk away from. Sometimes life doesn't warn you before it pulls you into someone else's storm. You think you're just helping a stranger, and suddenly, you're part of the story. If you've ever been pulled into something you didn't see coming, let me know in the comments. And if you're still here, still hooked like I was that night, hit that like button. Because the next part reveals what Jason did that made both sides want him dead. Make sure you're subscribed. You'll want to hear what happens when blood, loyalty, and love collide. The rain had finally stopped by morning, but the silence it left behind was worse. It wasn't peace. It was the kind of quiet that follows chaos. Heavy, watchful, and full of questions that no one wanted to answer. I sat by the window of Luca's safe house, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of whiskey and smoke. The city was waking up outside, pretending everything was normal. But inside that room, normal didn't exist anymore. Luca was on the phone, pacing, his tone sharp but controlled. Marco leaned against the wall, cleaning a gun like he was polishing silverware. Every now and then, his eyes flicked toward me. Not with distrust, but like he was trying to figure out how someone like me had ended up in a world like theirs. When Luca finally hung up, the air shifted. He didn't say anything at first. He just stared out the window for a long time, his reflection split by the morning light. Then softly he said, "Your brother's alive." The words hit harder than I expected. For months I'd been chasing shadows, whispers, lies, dead ends. And now suddenly he was real again. I swallowed hard. "Where is he?" Luca turned, his eyes meeting mine. "That's the part I don't like. He's in Sicily." "Sicily," he nodded. "Under Vescari's watch, but not as a prisoner." My heart started racing. "Then what is he?" Luca hesitated, then said quietly, "He's working for him." The words didn't make sense at first. I laughed, bitter, hollow. "No, you're wrong. Jason hated men like Viscari. He used to say—" "He's not the same man you remember," Luca interrupted gently. "People change when survival's on the line." I shook my head, trying to make sense of it. So you're saying he betrayed you too? I'm saying he's deeper in this than you realize. Luca walked over to the table, spread out a few old photos and documents. Maps, coded messages, grainy surveillance shots. In one of them, blurry but clear enough, was Jason. His hair was longer, his face harder. He was standing beside a black SUV, talking to one of Vescari's lieutenants. That was taken 2 weeks ago, Luca said. He was delivering ledgers, accounting data from Vescari's offshore accounts. I stared at the photo, my heart sinking. That can't be right. Jason doesn't even... I stopped. Because the truth was, I didn't know what Jason could or couldn't do anymore. Luca watched me quietly. You want to find him? He asked. I nodded. Then you'll have to come with me. His tone left no room for argument, but my head was spinning. Why me? I'm not one of you. I don't belong in your world. He leaned forward slightly. You're already in it. The way he said it, soft, certain, made something shift inside me. Because deep down, I knew he was right. Whatever line I thought separated our lives was gone now. Later that night, the plan started forming. Marco laid out the logistics while Luca studied an old ledger like it held all the answers. We fly at dawn, Marco said. Sicily first, then we move through Palermo. Vescari's men run surveillance near the coast, so we'll need a distraction. Luca nodded, barely looking up. I'll handle Vescari. And the girl? Marco asked. Luca's voice hardened slightly. She's not the girl. She's part of this now. I should have been scared. But for the first time since it all began, I wasn't. Because underneath all the chaos, all the danger, there was something else growing. Trust. Or maybe something even more dangerous than that. As I packed a small bag in the guest room, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Tired eyes, wet hair, a stranger staring back. Who was I becoming? That's when Luca appeared in the doorway. You shouldn't come, he said quietly. I turned. You just said... I know what I said. But Sicily isn't the diner. It's not a storm you can just walk out of. Once you go in, there's no walking back. I met his eyes. You think I came this far to quit now? For the first time, he smiled. Not the cold kind, not the dangerous one. A real smile, the kind that almost made him look human again. Then stay close, he said softly. And whatever happens, don't trust anyone, not even me. That night I couldn't sleep. The wind rattled the windows, carrying whispers I didn't want to hear. Every few minutes my mind replayed that photo of Jason, my brother, alive, but unrecognizable. What if Luca was wrong? What if Jason was being forced to help Vescari? Or worse, what if he wasn't? I closed my eyes, hoping for peace. But instead, I saw headlights, that first night at the diner. And Luca's voice echoing in the dark. Stay still, please. Even in my dreams, I couldn't move. Some stories start with a choice. Others start with a mistake. Mine started with a text, one I sent to the wrong man. And now I was on my way to another country, chasing a brother I barely recognized, beside a man the world called a monster. But maybe monsters were just people who got tired of losing the ones they loved. If you've ever searched for someone who changed before your eyes, tell me in the comments, did you still recognize them when you found them? And if this story has you holding your breath like I was that night, hit that like button. It tells me you're still with me through the storm. Make sure you've subscribed too, because the next part reveals why Jason switched sides, and the truth might hurt more than the betrayal itself. By the time the plane touched down in Sicily, the sky looked bruised, streaks of orange and violet fading into the sea. It wasn't the Italy I'd imagined from postcards. No laughter, no wine, no music. Just an island heavy with secrets. Luca walked ahead of me through the small private terminal, blending in perfectly. Tailored suit, dark glasses, the kind of quiet confidence that made people step aside without knowing why. Marco followed close behind, scanning every corner like a hawk. I felt completely out of place. Every sound made my heart jump. The echo of heels, the low hum of engines, the murmur of Italian words I couldn't quite catch. But the moment I stepped outside, the warm air hit my skin, and I realized this wasn't just a new place. It was another battlefield, We didn't go to a hotel. Luca's driver took us straight to a coastal villa, perched high above the sea, hidden behind walls draped in ivy. It wasn't luxury. It was camouflage. Inside, maps and photos covered the dining table. A floor plan, marked routes, shaded faces. At the center of it all, Viscari's mansion, circled in red. Marco tossed me a file. "This is what we know," he said. Inside were photographs, receipts, coded ledgers, and one image that froze me. Jason again, but this time his hand was on Viscari's shoulder, and he was smiling. My stomach turned. "That's not him," I said automatically. "He wouldn't," Luca cut in quietly. "People smile for different reasons. Sometimes it's loyalty, sometimes it's survival." His voice was calm, but I saw something shift in his eyes, like he'd lived that truth before. He slid another page toward me. "Tomorrow night, Viscari hosts a private auction at the Palazzo del Mare. Your brother will be there." "That's our only chance," I frowned. "Auction? For what?" "Information," Marco replied. "Names, leverage, things men like him buy to keep their empires alive." He looked at me pointedly. "And your brother's the one bringing the files." I felt my heart thud in my chest. "So what's the plan?" Luca leaned closer, his tone low and deliberate. "You're going in as bait." For a moment I thought he was joking, but he wasn't. He explained the setup. I'd pose as one of the servers at the event, just like before. My face wasn't known to Viscari's men, but Jason would recognize me instantly. "He'll come to you," Luca said. "And when he does, I'll be waiting." I stared at him. "You think this will work?" He shrugged slightly. "It has to." That night, as I stood by the villa's balcony, staring at the endless black water below, I felt something strange. Not fear, not excitement, but a weight in my chest that I couldn't shake. Luca joined me, silent for a while, then said quietly, "You shouldn't be the one doing this." I looked at him. "Then why let me?" "Because if I don't," he said, "you'll try it anyway. I can see it in your eyes." He wasn't wrong. The wind tugged at my hair as I turned to him. "You ever regret it? The life you chose?" He hesitated, then said, "Every day. But regret doesn't erase blood." Then, softer, "You still have time to walk away." I smiled faintly. "You keep saying that, but I think you already know I won't." Something flickered behind his eyes. Something almost human, almost tender. But he turned away before I could see it fully. The next evening came too quickly. The Palazzo del Mare was a fortress dressed as a palace. Chandeliers, marble floors, laughter that sounded too sharp to be real. I wore the same uniform as the other servers, hair tied back, a silver tray trembling slightly in my hands. Luca's voice crackled softly in my earpiece. "Stay calm. Just eyes on him, nothing else." "I'm calm," I whispered, though my pulse was racing. And then I saw him. Jason. He stood near the center of the hall, talking to two older men. His hair was shorter now, slicked back, his suit immaculate. He looked like someone else, someone who belonged here. I took a slow breath and walked toward him, pretending to serve champagne. When I stopped beside him, his gaze flicked toward me, and for a second his expression faltered. "Anna?" he whispered. My heart nearly stopped. "Keep your voice down," I said softly. "You shouldn't even be here." He looked around, nervous. "You don't understand. Then make me understand." He hesitated, his eyes darting toward a man across the room. "Viscari." Jason's voice dropped to a whisper. "You have to leave. Right now, before he sees you." "I'm not leaving without you." "You don't get it," Jason said urgently. "I'm not trapped here. I chose this." The words hit me like a slap. I almost dropped the tray. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. His eyes were cold now, calm, detached. "Viscari showed me what Luca really is. You think he's your savior? He's the reason I disappeared." My blood ran cold. "You're lying, am I?" he said quietly. "Ask him what happened in Naples. Ask him about the ledger he burned." In my earpiece, Luca's voice suddenly came through, tight, sharp. "Get out of there, now." Jason stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Tell your boss I said hello," he whispered. Then he turned away, blending into the crowd. I froze, heart pounding, every word spinning in my head. "Ask him about Naples." He's the reason I disappeared. My mind raced. What did Luca hide from me? What had he done to Jason? Before I could move, a hand gripped my arm. "Marco. Time to go," he hissed. "Now!" He pulled me through the service hallway as chaos erupted behind us. Shouts, breaking glass, gunfire. Luca's voice shouted something through the earpiece, but it was drowned out by the sound of the crowd. By the time we reached the car, my hands were shaking. Luca climbed in seconds later, blood on his sleeve, his face unreadable. He didn't look at me, not once. That night, as we sped through the dark Sicilian roads, I realized something terrifying. Maybe Jason wasn't lying, and maybe the man I'd trusted, the man who saved my life, wasn't who he seemed. But the worst part, even knowing that, I couldn't stop caring. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the person who made you feel safe. If you were in my place, would you still trust him? Tell me in the comments. I really want to know what you would have done. And if this story has your heart racing like mine did that night, hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed, because the next part reveals what really happened in Naples. And once you hear it, you'll never see Luca the same way again. We didn't speak the entire drive back from the palazzo. The road wound along the cliffs, headlights cutting through fog that looked almost alive. The sea below crashed against the rocks, loud, endless, angry. Marco sat in silence beside Luca, his gun resting across his knee. I sat in the back seat, staring at Luca's reflection in the rearview mirror. Every time I tried to look away, I found myself drawn back, to his stillness, to the quiet danger in the way he breathed like nothing ever surprised him. But something had changed tonight. He wasn't calm anymore. He was thinking. Too much. When we finally reached the villa, he stepped out first and disappeared inside without a word. Marco turned toward me, his voice low. "Don't ask him anything tonight. Not after what happened, but how could I not? My brother had just told me Luca was the reason he vanished, that the man I trusted might have destroyed him. So when I heard Luca's footsteps later, I followed him, through the hallway, down the narrow stairs that led to the wine cellar. He was standing by a desk, sleeves rolled up, staring at a photo in his hands. When he noticed me, he didn't look surprised. "You should be sleeping," he said quietly. "I can't," I replied. "Not after what I heard." He didn't move. I took a step closer. "Jason said you're the reason he disappeared." Silence. Only the hum of the old generator filled the air. Finally, he said, "Your brother was working for me once." The words hit like thunder. I froze. "What?" He looked up at me, eyes dark but steady. "I hired him in Naples. 2 years ago. He was smart, quiet, good with numbers. I didn't know he was your brother until much later." He poured himself a drink, his voice flat. He found something he shouldn't have. My pulse quickened. "What was it?" "A list," he said. "Names, accounts, every politician, cop, and Judge Vescari owned." He took a sip of whiskey, not breaking eye contact. That list could destroy half of Italy's underworld. I tried to breathe, but my chest felt tight. "So what happened?" "He wanted to expose it," Luca said. "He came to me one night, scared but determined. Said he wanted out. Said he wanted to take it public. I told him not to. Why? Because men like us don't get second chances," he said coldly. "Vescari would have killed him and anyone standing near him." I felt tears sting my eyes. "So you stopped him?" He looked away. "I burned the ledger. The room spun." "You destroyed everything he risked his life for?" "I saved his life," Luca said sharply. "You think Vescari wouldn't have hunted him down if that list got out?" "I made him disappear. I sent him away." My voice broke. "You sent him to Vescari?" "No," Luca said quietly. "Vescari got to him after. Someone betrayed us both. That's what happened in Naples." For the first time, I saw something in him that wasn't control. It was regret. Real, raw regret. He leaned against the desk, his hand trembling slightly. "When I found out, it was too late. Your brother was already gone. His voice cracked just enough to sound human, and I never forgave myself for it. The room went quiet. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to hate him, to scream, to walk away. But part of me understood, because in his world, saving someone didn't mean keeping them alive. It meant hiding them from everything, even the truth. I sat down across from him, trying to steady my breath. "Why didn't you tell me before? Would you have believed me?" he asked softly. I wanted to say yes, but the truth was, I didn't know anymore. He looked at me for a long time, eyes searching mine for something. Forgiveness, maybe. "Anna," he said finally, "I never wanted you involved, but now you're part of this, whether you like it or not." "I didn't ask to be," I whispered. "No one ever does," he replied. Later that night, I found him outside, standing on the balcony, staring at the waves. The moonlight cut across his face, tracing every scar, every memory he couldn't let go of. He didn't look at me when he spoke. "I buried a lot of people in Naples," he said, "but none of them haunt me like your brother." I stepped closer. "You think he's still loyal to Vascari?" Luca nodded slowly. "He's gone too far, but he's not the enemy. Vascari is using him, and when he's done, he'll kill him. Then we have to find him first." Luca turned to me. "We will." There was something in his tone that made me believe him, not because he promised it, but because he needed to. Maybe saving Jason wasn't about redemption. Maybe it was the only way Luca could forgive himself. That night, as I lay awake in the villa's guest room, I couldn't stop replaying his words. I never forgave myself for it. He wasn't just fighting Vascari. He was fighting his own ghosts. And I couldn't help but wonder, if saving Jason meant losing Luca, what would I choose? Some secrets don't destroy you right away. They wait, buried deep, until the moment you think you're safe. Then they come for you. If you felt that ache, that pull between anger and sympathy, hit the like button right now. And tell me in the comments, do you think Luca's telling the truth, or is there still something he's hiding? Make sure you're subscribed, because in the next part, the war begins. And when blood starts spilling in Sicily, no one walks away untouched. Morning came slow. The kind of morning that didn't feel like a beginning, just a pause before something terrible. The waves outside the villa were calm, but the air felt heavy, like even the sea was holding its breath. I found Luca in the courtyard, already dressed, his gun holstered beneath his jacket. He looked different, colder, sharper. The quiet in him had changed. It wasn't peace anymore. It was the calm before a storm. Marco was checking weapons by the jeep. He looked at me once and said, "You sure you want to be here when this starts?" I didn't answer, because the truth was, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Luca looked up from his phone. "We move in 1 hour," he said. "Where?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, "To finish what Naples started." The words didn't sound like a plan. They sounded like a promise. The drive was quiet, the tension thick enough to choke on. The further we got from the coast, the older the roads became, narrow, cracked, lined with olive trees that seemed to whisper as the wind passed through them. When we reached the small Sicilian town of Trapani, the streets were nearly empty. A few shops, a church bell ringing somewhere in the distance, but Luca didn't stop for the scenery. He stopped at a crumbling stone house with blue shutters. Inside, an old man was waiting. His hands trembled as he lit a cigarette. When he saw Luca, he smiled faintly, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "I told you never to come back here," the man said in Italian. "And yet here I am," Luca replied. The man's gaze shifted to me, curious. "She doesn't belong to your world, ragazzo." "She does now," Luca said quietly. They spoke for a few minutes in low, fast Italian. I couldn't understand every word, but I caught names: Vascari, Napoli, Fratello, brother. Finally, the old man slid a small envelope across the table. Luca opened it, scanned the papers inside, and his jaw tightened. Then he looked up, his voice steady but dark. Jason's been moving shipments for Viscari through the Palermo docks. But that's not all. Marco frowned. What else? Luca turned the paper toward us. It was a photograph, grainy, black and white. In it, Jason stood beside another man. Not Viscari. Someone older. Who's that? I asked. Luca's silence said everything. Luca, I pressed. Who is he? He exhaled slowly. My father. The room froze. I blinked, not sure I'd heard him right. Your father? He nodded once. He's alive. And he's with Viscari, the old man snorted. Alive, yes, but the man you knew is long gone. He built the foundation of what Viscari now controls. Blood built that empire. Your blood. Luca's expression didn't change, but his hands curled into fists. He looked like a man hearing his own ghost speak. I whispered. Why didn't you ever tell anyone? Because he was supposed to be dead, Luca said quietly. And maybe he should have stayed that way. Marco leaned forward. If he's working with Viscari, that changes everything. This isn't just business anymore. No, Luca said. It's family. On the way back, no one spoke. The sun was sinking, painting the hills gold and blood red. I couldn't stop staring at Luca's reflection in the window, the way his jaw clenched, the way his silence grew heavier with every mile. Finally, I said softly, You don't have to face him. His eyes flicked toward me in the mirror. Yes, I do, because if I don't, he'll come for me first, and when he does, he won't miss this time. The way he said it, calm, almost resigned, made my skin prickle. This wasn't about power anymore. It was about ghosts coming home. That night, as darkness fell, the storm began again. The kind that starts quietly, like a warning. Luca stood on the balcony, wind whipping through his hair, eyes on the black horizon. I joined him, though my heart was racing. He built everything you're fighting now, I said quietly. You could walk away. He smiled, faint, bitter. You don't walk away from the man who taught you how to kill. The words made me shiver. Then he turned to me, his expression softening. You think I'm a monster, he said. I hesitated. No. I think you're a man who forgot how to forgive himself. He looked away, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. Maybe that's worse. For a moment, the world went still. No wind, no sound, just him and me and the weight of everything we hadn't said. Then, somewhere in the distance, a phone rang. Luca answered it. His expression darkened instantly. What is it? I asked. He lowered the phone, his voice quiet but sharp. They found Jason. Where? He met my eyes. Palermo, my breath caught. He put the phone down, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. I followed, but he stopped just long enough to look back at me. If anything happens tonight, he said softly, don't wait for me. Just run. But deep down we both knew I wouldn't. Some stories don't give you choices. They drag you where they want you, into blood, into memory, into the truth you never wanted to face. And this one was about to bleed. If your heart dropped when you heard my father's alive, then you know we've crossed into the dangerous part. Hit the like button if you're still here, because what happens next will change everything. Tell me in the comments, would you face the person who made you who you are? Even if it meant losing everything? And don't forget to subscribe, because in part 11, the betrayal comes full circle. This time, blood won't just spill. It'll mean something. Palermo looked alive that night. The kind of alive that made your heart race for all the wrong reasons. Neon lights flickered against wet pavement. Voices echoed through narrow alleys. And somewhere deep in the noise, I could feel danger breathing. Luca's convoy moved quietly through the city. 2 cars deep. Marco drove up front, while I sat beside Luca in the back seat, clutching my hands so tightly my knuckles ached. Neither of us spoke. There was nothing left to say. We reached an old port, rusted cranes, half-sunken ships, warehouses that hadn't seen sunlight in years. That's where they said Jason would be. That's where it would all end. Luca stepped out first, scanning the shadows. The smell of salt and oil mixed in the air. He adjusted his coat, his voice low. Stay behind me. I followed anyway. The main warehouse door was open just enough for light to spill through. Inside, the sound of footsteps echoed, slow, deliberate, like someone waiting to be found. Luca walked in first. And there he was, Jason. He stood in the middle of the room, gun holstered at his hip, eyes calm but tired. Behind him, another figure stepped out of the dark. Older, taller, with the same cold, commanding stillness that Luca had. It was him. Luca's father. For a second, no one moved. No one breathed. The air itself felt too tight to hold. "Hello, son," the old man said. His voice was soft, almost gentle, but the kind of gentle that cuts deeper than a knife. Luca didn't flinch. "I buried you years ago." The older man smiled faintly. "You buried a name, not a man." He stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. "You've been busy, I see. Cleaning the blood you spilled with your own. Trying to rewrite history." Luca's voice was quiet, lethal. "You taught me how." Jason looked between them, uncertain. "You said he'd understand," he muttered. The old man's expression shifted just slightly. "He will. Eventually." That's when I realized. Jason hadn't been captured. He'd been used. I stepped forward. "Jason, what are you doing here?" He turned toward me, eyes full of something I couldn't name. "I'm trying to fix what he broke. He saved you," I shouted. Jason shook his head. "He saved himself. You think he's any better than Viscari? Look around, and this is his legacy." Luca's jaw tightened. "You're wrong," he said. "I tried to destroy everything he built." His father smiled again, cold, knowing. "And yet here you are, still carrying my name, still doing what I taught you." For the first time, Luca's voice cracked. "I'm nothing like you." "Oh, but you are," the old man said softly. "The only difference is that you pretend to feel guilt about it." Then suddenly, everything shifted. A shadow moved behind the crates. Marco shouted, "Down!" Gunfire erupted. The air exploded with sound. Bullets tore through the metal walls, sparks flying like lightning. Luca grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a pillar. "Stay low," he yelled. Jason ducked behind a truck, shouting orders I couldn't hear. For a moment, I didn't know who was shooting at who. All I knew was that the world had gone insane. Then I saw him. Luca's father standing calmly in the chaos, not even ducking. He raised his hand, signaling something, and the gunfire stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Smoke hung in the air. Men lay bleeding on the floor. Marco was down, wounded but alive. Luca stepped forward, gun drawn, his face pale with rage. "Call them off!" he growled. His father tilted his head. "You think you can point that at me and still walk out of here alive?" "I don't need to walk out," Luca said. "I just need to make sure you don't." For a long, terrifying second, the two men stared at each other, father and son, mirror and shadow. And then the old man laughed softly. "You still don't get it, do you? I didn't build this world for power. I built it for survival. You tear it down, and you doom us all." Luca's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then let it burn." He pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the warehouse like thunder. The old man stumbled, just once, and then fell. Jason screamed. He ran forward, catching him before he hit the ground. "Dad!" I froze. That word, Dad, tore through the air like a blade. Luca's face went blank. "What did you call him?" he said quietly. Jason's voice cracked. "He raised me. When you left Naples, he took me in." The world tilted. Everything we thought we knew shattered in a single breath. Luca lowered his gun, his eyes wide with realization. It wasn't betrayal. It was blood. Different blood, but blood all the same. Jason looked up, tears streaking down his face. "He wasn't your father anymore, Luca. He was mine." Luca didn't respond. He just turned and walked out into the night. No anger, no words, just silence. The kind that means something inside you has broken beyond repair. I followed him, calling his name, but he didn't stop. He walked until the docks disappeared behind us, until only the ocean was left. Then he said quietly, "You ever feel like everything you destroy comes back wearing a face you once loved?" I didn't answer, because sometimes there aren't any words for pain that old. Some stories don't end with victory. They end with the truth. And sometimes, the truth is worse than any lie. If your heart ached when Jason said he was my father, drop a HIM in the comments. And if you're still here, still breathing through this, hit that like button. It helps me keep telling the stories that make your heart race and break at the same time. 3 days, that's how long it's been since Palermo burned. Since the docks echoed with gunfire, and Luca walked away into the night like a ghost. No one's seen him since. Not Marco, not the men who swore loyalty to him. Even the whispers in the underworld had gone quiet. And when that world goes quiet, you know something's wrong. I stayed at the villa. It didn't feel like a home anymore, just walls holding secrets I didn't want to hear. The ocean outside crashed harder each night, like it was trying to tell me something I couldn't understand. Every morning, I'd wake up expecting to see him standing there, leaning against the balcony rail with that unreadable calm, coffee in hand, eyes on the horizon. But he never came back. Marco stopped by once. He looked exhausted, older somehow. They found Jason's body, he said flatly. 2 towns over. Shot twice. The words hit harder than I expected. I didn't even realize I was crying until Marco handed me a napkin from his pocket. Who did it? I whispered. He shook his head. No one knows. Could have been Viscari's men. Could have been one of ours. Could have been Luca. I wanted to defend him, to say he wouldn't. But the truth was, I didn't know anymore. Not after that night. Not after everything that broke inside him. That evening, I walked down to the shore. The sun was bleeding into the water, staining the waves orange and red. It looked like the whole world was on fire again. That's when I saw it. A figure standing far down the beach. Tall. Still. Familiar. My heart jumped before my mind could catch up. I ran. But by the time I got close, he was already turning away. Luca. He stopped. Didn't turn. Didn't speak. Just waited. When I reached him, I saw the salt in his hair, the stubble along his jaw. He looked different, not weaker, not stronger, just gone. Like whatever was left of the man I knew had been stripped away. I thought you were dead, I breathed. He looked out toward the horizon. Maybe I am. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the waves. Jason's gone, I said finally. He nodded once. I know. I stared at him, waiting, for guilt, for rage, for anything. But all I saw was emptiness. You knew? I whispered. His voice was so soft I almost missed it. He called me before it happened. Said he wanted to make peace. And you? I didn't answer. That's when I realized it wasn't anger that hollowed him out. It was regret. It was the kind that doesn't make noise, doesn't beg for forgiveness. It just eats you alive quietly until there's nothing left. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. Finally, I asked, what now? Luca exhaled slowly. Viscari still breathes. My father's men are scattering, but they'll regroup. There's only one way to end this. Another war? He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the dying light. No, something worse. He stood up, brushing the sand from his hands. I need to disappear for a while. The words sliced through me. Disappear? Where? He shook his head. Somewhere you can't follow. I stepped closer. Don't do this. Not again. He gave me a faint, almost broken smile. You said once that I was a man who forgot how to forgive himself. Maybe it's time I tried. He started walking away, and panic hit me all at once. I grabbed his arm. Luca, please. He turned, his hand gently cupping the back of my neck. Not to hold me back, but to memorize the moment. You saved me once, Anna. When you said those words at the diner, stay still, please. You didn't even know who I was, but you saved me. Tears blurred my vision. Then let me save you again. He smiled sadly. You already did. And before I could say another word, he was gone, swallowed by the fog and the sound of the sea. Days turned into weeks. Rumors drifted in from every corner of the coast. Some said Luca Castelli was dead. Some said he was in Argentina, running black market operations under a new name. Others swore he'd gone rogue, hunting down what was left of his father's empire, one bullet at a time. But none of them felt right, because I could still feel him, somewhere out there, still watching, still waiting. And somehow, I knew. This wasn't the end. Just the silence before the next storm. They say some ghosts never leave. Some just learn to walk like men. If your heart ached when Luca said, "Maybe I am dead," you felt what I felt writing it. Hit the like button. Let's see how many of us are still here, holding our breath with Anna. Tell me in the comments, do you think Luca's redemption is even possible anymore? Or is he too far gone? It had been 3 months. 3 months since the beach. 3 months since Luca walked into the fog and vanished like smoke. The villa was quieter now. Most of his men had scattered. The room still smelled faintly of him, cedar, smoke, and something darker, a memory that refused to fade. I tried to move on. Tried to pretend that the story was over, but every night I'd hear his voice in my head. That low, calm whisper, "Stay still. Please." Sometimes I wondered if he ever said it to himself. If the man who could control everything except his past ever found peace. Then one night, the phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. When I answered, no one spoke. Just silence, and then, one breath, I froze. "It was him, Luca?" I whispered. He didn't answer, but I heard the faint hum of rain on glass and the soft clink of a lighter. Then finally, his voice. "Don't go to the docks tomorrow." The line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. The words kept looping in my head. Don't go to the docks tomorrow. By morning, I was at the docks. The sky hung low and gray, the sea restless beneath it. Police cars lined the pier, flashing lights reflecting off the water. And then I saw it. A warehouse half-collapsed, smoke curling from its roof. "Another fire?" someone muttered. I heard a name, quiet but certain. Vescari. They said his men were gone, that someone had hit his final base, hard and fast, leaving no survivors. Someone had done what Luca promised he would never do again. By nightfall, the city was whispering again. The name that once belonged to a ghost was alive in every corner of Palermo. Castelli. That name used to terrify people. Now it felt different, heavier, almost sacred. Because whoever had come back wasn't the same man who disappeared. I found him 2 nights later. Or maybe he found me. I was closing the cafe when I saw him standing across the street, hands in his coat pockets, rain dripping from his hair. He looked the same, but his eyes, they weren't the same eyes. He stepped forward slowly. "For a second I thought I was dreaming, Luca," I whispered. He smiled faintly. "You still make coffee this late?" My chest tightened. "You're alive." "Depends who's asking." I wanted to run to him, but something in his expression stopped me. There was distance there, a quiet kind. The kind that comes from crossing a line you can't come back from. "What did you do?" I asked softly. He didn't answer right away. Finally he said, "I ended it." "Vescari?" He nodded once. "And everyone tied to him." I stared at him, searching his face for something human. Guilt, pain, relief. But there was nothing. Just calm. Too calm. "Luca," I whispered. "What did it cost you?" He met my eyes, and for a moment, I saw the answer there. Everything. We sat in silence for a while, inside the empty cafe. The only sound was the rain tapping the windows. "I didn't come back for forgiveness," he said. "I came back to finish something." "What?" He leaned back in his chair. "There's one name left." My stomach turned. "Who?" He looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, "My own." It hit me like a wave. He wasn't here to rebuild. He was here to erase himself. The last trace of what he once was. "You think that's what redemption looks like?" I asked, my voice breaking. He looked down at his hands. "Redemption doesn't look like anything. It's just what you do when you're tired of running." I wanted to reach for him, to stop him from disappearing again. But maybe he was already gone, just wearing the face of the man I remembered. Before he left, he looked back once. "You should close the cafe early tomorrow," he said. "It's going to rain." Then he was gone again, swallowed by the streetlights and the storm. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about his words. The way his voice broke slightly when he said everything. The way he still carried the weight of everyone he couldn't save, Some men die once. Others die every time they remember who they were, and Luca Castelli was learning how to die quietly. If your heart sank when Luca said, "I ended it," you felt that same cold silence I did writing this part. Hit the like button if you're still with me, still watching the rainfall with Anna. Tell me in the comments, do you think Luca deserves peace, or does he deserve his fate? The city slept like it was holding its breath. Rain soaked the streets of Palermo, blurring the lights into ghosts. That's the kind of night when memories wake up. And for Luca Castelli, memories were the most dangerous enemies left. I hadn't seen him for a week. No calls, no messages, just silence. The kind that seeps into your chest and whispers, "Something's coming." I felt it that evening, an unease I couldn't explain. The kind that crawls under your skin before the storm hits. The cafe was empty, closing time long past, when I heard the knock. 3 slow taps, just like the first time I ever saw him. My heart skipped. When I opened the door, there he was, drenched in rain, black suit, blood on his knuckles. Luca. He didn't speak, just walked in and dropped something onto the counter, a small metal pendant, shaped like a wolf's head. I'd seen it before. It belonged to Viscari. He stared at it for a moment, then said quietly, "It's done." I swallowed. "You said that last time." "This time," he said, "I buried the right ghosts." He sat down at his usual spot, the one facing the window. The rain poured harder, streaking the glass like tears. For a long time, neither of us spoke. When he finally did, his voice was soft. "Do you believe people can change, Anna?" I hesitated. "I believe they can choose who they become." He smiled faintly. "And what if the choice is too late?" "It never is." He looked away, jaw tight. "You sound like me." Before I learned how wrong that was. There was something in his tone, a finality that made my stomach twist. I leaned forward. "What did you do, Luca?" He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out a small envelope and slid it across the counter. "For you." I opened it. Inside was a deed, the cafe's deed. "My name on it. What is this?" I whispered. "Freedom," he said. "Yours." That's when I realized what was happening. He was saying goodbye. Not like before. Not the kind where he vanishes into fog. This was the kind that leaves nothing behind. "Luca, no." He stood up, rain dripping from his hair, and smiled. That same quiet, tragic smile that always came before chaos. "Do you remember what you said that night?" he asked. "When you told me to stay still?" I nodded, tears blurring my vision. He stepped closer, whispering, "Maybe it's my turn now." "Please don't do this," I said. But he was already turning away. I followed him out into the storm. The streets were empty, just the echo of our footsteps. He stopped by the car, opened the door, and looked at me one last time. "I spent half my life running from who I was," he said, "and the other half pretending I could fix it." "Then stop running," I begged. "Start over." He shook his head slowly. "Men like me don't start over. We end." I grabbed his coat, voice breaking. "Luca, if you ever loved me," he froze. Then, almost inaudibly, he said, "That's the problem." He leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. "Loving you made me want to be human again. But humans pay for what they break." He stepped back, and before I could stop him, he was gone, disappearing into the night, headlights flashing across the wet street. An hour later, the explosion shook the city. It came from the old Castelli estate, a fire that lit up the sky like daylight. They said it was an accident. They said no one survived, but I didn't believe them, not for a second, because 2 days later I got a letter. No return address, just one line written in his hand. "You said once I could choose who I become. Maybe I finally did." I read it over and over until the ink smudged with tears, and somewhere deep down, I smiled through the ache. Because if Luca Castelli was gone, it wasn't in flames. It was in peace. Sometimes stories don't end where you expect. Sometimes the ending isn't about who died. It's about who finally learned how to live. If your heart broke when Anna said, "Then stop running," leave a "at" in the comments so I know you felt it too. Hit the like button if you're still here, still hoping Luca found peace. even if it's in silence. And don't forget to subscribe, because part 15, The Letter He Never Sent, is next. And trust me, it'll change the way you see everything. It's strange, isn't it? How silence can feel louder than screams. The city moved on, like it always does, but I never really did. Some nights, I still wake up hearing the echo of his voice, that calm whisper through chaos. Stay still, please. And every time I hear it, I look toward the window, half expecting headlights to flash across the glass again. But they never do. It's been 6 months now. The cafe's mine, officially. Business is good. People smile when they come in. They say it feels peaceful here. They don't know the ghosts that built this peace. Every morning I open the shop early and I still make 2 cups of coffee. One for me, and one for the man who taught me that redemption isn't about forgiving yourself. It's about choosing better, even when no one's watching. One rainy morning, I got another letter. No name, no return address, just a small wax seal, shaped like a wolf's head. My hands trembled before I even opened it. Inside, there was no apology, no goodbye. Just a few lines, written in the same neat, heavy handwriting I'd memorized. If you're reading this, I guess I kept my promise. I told you I'd disappear, but I never said I'd stop watching over you. You made me believe in something I never thought I deserved. Peace. Keep the cafe. Keep the warmth. I'm finally keeping my word. I read it once, then again. And then I just sat there crying into cold coffee. Because even in death, or whatever this was, Luca still knew how to say everything without saying much at all. That night, I lit a candle on the counter. The same counter where he'd once left that pendant, the wolf's head. It was still there, scratched, tarnished, but whole. I held it for a long time, feeling the weight of it in my palm. And maybe for the first time, I didn't feel fear when I thought of him, just warmth, because monsters don't always stay monsters. Sometimes they just find their way home in pieces. I stepped outside and looked up at the sky. Rain clouds parted just enough to show a hint of light, and for a moment I could almost hear him, that calm, steady voice. Stay still, please. I smiled. I am, I whispered back. If you made it this far, you didn't just listen. You felt it. Hit the like button if Luca's story stayed with you the way it stayed with me. Tell me in the comments, did he find peace? Or do you think he's still out there, watching from the shadows? And if you want more stories like this, stories that make you feel, make sure you subscribe, because what's coming next is darker, deeper, and even more human. That's the end of Stay Still, Please. The waitress who warned the Mafia boss before the betrayal.